From the land of 10,000 lakes and just as many heartaches, welcome to the 301 Show. We're here to celebrate, commiserate, and maybe, just maybe, see a Minnesota team win it all. Whether you're dreaming of a Vikings Super Bowl, reliving the glory days of the Twins, or still recovering from the Timberwolves roller coaster, we've got you covered. This is the 301 Show, where the North remembers and the passion never fades.
All right, welcome into the 301 Show, episode 23. I do apologize for not having an episode out last week. I was sick all week, as you can probably hear in my voice. I'm still recovering from it. I'm feeling a lot better now, so wanted to get this one out for you guys. But I've got some ups and downs this week with Minnesota sports. Got some weather-related news with the one team that plays outside. And then not much is happening on the gridiron at this point. We've got some training camps starting, but we haven't gotten a ton of news out of Egan just yet. And then the two playoff teams, one just wrapped it up and one looks like they're about to get wrapped up at this point. And the Wild also have nothing really going on. So, great episode here today, and let's get into it. All right, getting into the target field talkers at this point. The Twins have improved to 29-24 on the season. They are 5 games above 500. In the AL Central, they are tied for second. They are 5 games out of first place behind the Detroit Tigers. The Kansas City Royals are 1 game behind them, and they are tied with the Cleveland Guardians. And who really knows where the AAA Chicago team is playing? Where they are in the standings at this point. But the wild card race, they are tied with Cleveland for first place in the wild card race. They are 1 game up on the third wild card spot, which is a tie with Kansas City and I forget who else at this point, but they are 1 game up on them, and then they are 1 game up on the top team out of the playoffs, so the Twins are 2 games out or up on the first team out of the playoffs. In terms of their hitting rankings, they're 20th in batting average at a 238, 22nd on base at a 307, slugging they are tied for 20th, on base plus slugging they are tied for 22nd, runs scored 22nd, home runs 20th. Doubles, they are tied for 14th. In walks, they have the 27th fewest. In strikeouts, they are on walks, they are tied for 27th. So they are 3rd fewest or 4th fewest in the league. In strikeouts, they are 13th fewest. So that's a pretty good number there. And in stolen bases, they are tied for 24th. So they're hitting. Again, I know they've got guys injured. Buxton and Correa were hurt for a week in there. And so these guys are not fully healthy at the plate. But the pitching and fielding rankings, they are 5th in ERA with a 3.28 on the pitching staff side. They have 16 quality starts from their starters, which is 24th. Their whip is a 1.16, which is tied for 4th. They are striking out. They've struck out 471 batters, which is the 8th most. And they've only walked 128 batters, which is the fewest in the entire MLB. So absolutely fantastic to see there. They are not forcing their fielders to make plays in the field, and they're just striking them all out. And they're not just giving guys free passes to first base. They have 128 walks, which again is the fewest in the MLB. Absolutely fantastic to see from the pitching side. We just need the hitting side to pick it up a little bit. In terms of errors, they have 28 errors, which is 20th. Their fielding percentage is in 984, which is tied for 21st. So fielding has been down a little bit. They've got again, when Buxton is hurt, that obviously doesn't help. But definitely helps that they have a center fielder playing left field that they can move to center, which is why they signed Harrison Bader. In terms of the past 2 weeks, they took 2 of 3 in Milwaukee. The streak ended at 13 games. In their 3-game series against Cleveland here in Minnesota, that was described as the rain-controlled series. They got 1 game postponed. The game on Monday got suspended and pushed back until Wednesday. And then they had a doubleheader on Wednesday while it was still raining. Probably should have canceled the second game, but they were able to finish both of them. They split that doubleheader, so they went 1-1 against the Guardians. And then they took 2 of 3 against the Kansas City Royals. They had 2 walk-offs, including a comeback where they were down 4-0 on Saturday. So we're looking ahead here. They are currently in Tampa Bay playing a 3-game series. They've got a 3-game series in Seattle coming up before they go play 4 games in Sacramento. This is their longest road trip of the year. It is a 10-game road trip. And again, luckily they won't have to go on the road for this long the rest of the season. But again, my thoughts on this team: pitching is not the issue. Pitching is absolutely not the issue at this point. It is 100% the offense. And that, again, could very well just be the fact that, Wallner's hurt and, Royce was hurt at the beginning of the year and is trying to catch his stride. Looks like Correa has been trying to battle through an injury, and then he got concussed when he and Buxton ran into each other, and that's why Buxton's out too, as they were both in concussion protocol. But they just, regardless, the offense needs to play better. They need to hit better. They absolutely need to hit better at this point. And I think there are teams certainly on paper better than them. I think the Tigers are better than them. The Tigers look like they're the best team in baseball this year. I think on paper the Yankees are better than them. I think the Dodgers are better than the Dodgers on paper look like the best team in the league. But actually playing the season, it's definitely the Tigers are playing like the best team so far this year. So that definitely doesn't help that the Tigers are in their division, and that is who they are trailing. But there are teams on paper better than them this year. And my thoughts are just do this against the teams that are on paper better than you or are playing better than you. Like, that is how you'll prove to me that you are an actual championship contender. Right now, they look like a playoff contender. Like, they look like they're going to squeak into the playoffs as a wild card team. And just also for the fans at home that are still mad at this team and mad at the ownerships, it's okay to be mad at the ownership group. It's okay. This team, the ownership and this team has done nothing at this point outside of the last 20 games to, deserve you being fully bought back in. Yes, it's great that they've won, I think, 16 of their last 19 games. That's great. You also played Baltimore 6 times, who's awful this year. Put the White Sox in there. You had the Angels a couple series before that. I don't care about sweeps against bad teams. Sweeps against bad teams, all that tells me is that you are not a bad team. That doesn't tell me you're a good team. You got to go out and beat the good teams to prove to me that you're a good team. That's what you got to do. Obviously, you got to do what you're supposed to do against the bad teams. But if you do that, and then you lose to the good teams, that tells me you're a mediocre team. That tells me you're somewhere in the middle. So the fact that they're doing this against teams that are maybe on the upper echelon of the mediocre teams or the lower echelon of the good teams doesn't do much for me. It doesn't at this point. I need to see this over like a 2-month span and against good teams. Do this against the teams that you are not supposed to do it against. Continue doing it against the teams that you're supposed to do it against. But then go out and... The Angels swept the Dodgers last weekend. Or 2 weekends ago now. Do that against the Dodgers. Do that against the Tigers. Do that against the Yankees. Do that against the Guardians. Because even though on paper the Guardians aren't the greatest team, they always seem to find a way to stick around. Do that against these teams that either find ways to stick around or are actually just good teams. So I'm not going to have my rant go on for too long here this week. We're going to look at my predictions that came off the board for Target Field Talkers. Had 3 of them come off the board this week. The first one is that Carlos Santana will hit a home run against the Twins at some point this season. He did. He actually hit 2 home runs in the doubleheader against the Twins on Wednesday. Said Royce will hit a triple in Milwaukee, and the win streak gets to 15 games. Both of those were incorrect. That leaves us at 5 correct predictions for Target Field Talkers out of 27 total predictions for a 19% correct rate. The 3 predictions I have coming on the board here said the Twins will win 6+ games of their 10-game road trip. They lost last night in Tampa Bay, so they've got to win 6 of 9 games now. Said Pablo will have a start this season, the rest of the season, where he goes 7+ innings with less than 3 hits and 1 or less run. And then Royce Lewis will hit a grand slam this year. So those are my 3 predictions going on the board this week. And we will send it off to the next segment. All right, moving on to the Nordic Report here. Don't have a big news week here on the Nordic Report. Again, as I said, we are in the kind of dead of the off season where there's not a ton of news coming out of the training camp yet, as that's just getting underway. The spring practices are. Obviously, the draft has already happened. The big free agency period has kind of died down at this point. So this week, I'm going to be going through and trying to predict all of the games with on the Vikings schedule this year. All 17 games. And then I will let you know what I think their final record is going to be and their final record in the division. So, week 1, they are playing the Bears on Monday Night Football. I've got that as a win in Chicago. Week 2, Sunday Night Football against the Atlanta Falcons. We know how Kirk Cousins teams, will Kirk actually be on the Atlanta Falcons? Be the most expensive backup in the league if he is. Sunday Night Football, I've got that as a win for the Vikings as well. Week 3, against the Cincinnati Bengals, noon at home. Again, this is probably one of the scariest offenses the Vikings are going to face all year. One of them, maybe not the scariest, but definitely one of the scariest offenses they're going to face. Not that scary of a defense, though. I think it'll be a very high-scoring game. The Bengals, though, don't always get off to a good start to the year since Joe Burrow's been on the team. So I've got this as a win as well. I've got them 3-0 going into week 4 in Dublin against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That one will be at 8:30 Central Time. I've got that one as a loss. I think the travel, I'm also going to assume that Aaron Rodgers is on the Steelers at this point. I think this is a win if Mason Rudolph is their starting quarterback. But I think with the travel, both teams having the same, well, not the same because Pittsburgh's closer to Dublin than the Twin Cities are, but both of them having to travel together, I think that'll be more taxing on the Vikings than the Steelers. So I've got this as a loss, 3-1 at this point. They then will go to London to play the Cleveland Browns. I've got this as a win. I think that organization is just so dysfunctional at this point. They've got 5 quarterbacks on their roster right now. Probably Deshaun Watson's going to get released or they're going to get out of that contract at some point. But they will, they still need to cut at least one more quarterback off of that roster. And I don't see that team being all that great this year. I think it's going to be a competition between the Browns and the Saints this year for the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft. So I've got that as a win. I've got them at 4-1 going into their bye. Coming out of the bye, they will be hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. That game is at noon. I've got that as a loss. I think they lose against the Eagles. Again, the Eagles are just arguably, I said the Bengals were the best offense they play. I think the Eagles might be the best all-around team they play this upcoming year. The week after that, they play the Los Angeles Chargers on Thursday night. It is a short week, but I think they go to the Chargers and pull out a win on Thursday night. Then they got a 10-day break, so they got basically a second bye, and they are going to Detroit. I think they get a win in Detroit for the first time in what feels like forever. They will beat the Detroit Lions. And that wraps up a 6-week stretch where they have week 4 and 5, they're in Dublin. Then week 6, they're on a bye. Then they play a game against the Eagles at home. And then they got a game in LA and a game in Detroit. So that's a 6-week span where they play 4 away games. They have 1 home game and then the bye. So they only, in a 6-week span, they only play 1 home game. And I do think that is probably their toughest stretch the entire year. I do think if you can get out of that stretch with a 4-2 record, that is absolutely fantastic at that point. And the reason I say that's the toughest stretch is for the sole reason of it only being 1 home game at that point. And that 1 home game is the Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champs. So again, tough 6-week, month and a half long stretch at that point. Week 10 coming back home from Detroit, another game at noon. They play the Baltimore Ravens. I think that the Ravens are going to hand the Vikings their 3rd loss of the season. And then they play at home against the Chicago Bears. Guys, I will not believe in the Chicago Bears until I see it. The Chicago Bears have turned into the Detroit Lions, where I am just not going to be a believer in that team until I see them actually succeed. They've been crowned off-season Super Bowl champs the last 3 years running, and they have, obviously we've only played 2 of those seasons, but in those 2 seasons they have 11 wins in 34 games. I don't trust that team. Then they go from hosting the Bears to Green Bay at noon. I think they lose to the Packers in Green Bay. Then week 13, This is the last game in November. They play Sammy D and the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. It's a 3:05 game. I think they win in Seattle. They play the Washington Commanders at home in Week 14. I think Jaden Daniels, maybe not as much, but will have somewhat of a step back like CJ Stroud did. And I think that the Vikings beat the Washington Commanders at home at noon on a Sunday. Next week, at the Dallas Cowboys, Sunday Night Football in Week 15, they get the win there. I do think this Dallas Cowboys team is going to be better, but I do not think that they are going to be in contention for winning their division. I still think the Philadelphia Eagles are the team to beat in the NFC East. I think that they probably don't. I think they probably finished third in that division because I still think even if Jaden Daniels takes a step back, I still think they're a better all-around team than the Commanders are a better team than the Cowboys are. Week 16 at the New York Giants. Again, that's like, pick any of those teams there. The Browns at this point, they're just not a good team. That's a win in New York. Christmas Day, hosting the Detroit Lions, Week 17. It's a 3:30 game. It's a Thursday. That's a loss. I think they lose. I think they split with the Lions this year, and I think they each win on the road. Then Week 18, final game of the season, hosting the Green Bay Packers. Don't know when exactly it's going to be. Everything in Week 18 is TBD at this point. That's how the Lions-Vikings game last year in Week 18 got flexed to Sunday Night Football. Didn't really get flexed. It just got scheduled that way because Week 18 is always TBD. I think the Vikings win. I think they split against the Packers, and it's the reverse of the Lions, where it's the home teams winning those two games. So, final record, I have the Vikings going 12-5, and they are going 4-2 in the division. So I've got them with the same divisional record as last year. They get there a little bit differently, but they have 2 more losses on their schedule this year versus last year. Moving on to predictions, didn't have any come off the board this week. Still sitting at 33%, so we'll put 3 more on the board. One will come off sometime during this summer. And then the other 2 are award predictions here. So first award prediction is that KOC is nominated for Coach of the Year again this upcoming season, but he does not win it this season. Kwesi will get the multi-year extension by the 4th of July. And then I think a Vikings player, whoever the nominee is for the Vikings, will win the Walter Payton Man of the Year in 2025. All right, moving on to the Wolves' Den. Now, the Wolves find themselves down 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Game 1, they lost 114-88. Julius Randle led the Wolves in scoring with 28 points on 9 of 13 shooting. He also had 8 rebounds and 1 assist. Ant only had 18 points on 5 of 13. He had 9 rebounds and 3 assists, whereas SGA had 31 points on 10 of 27 shooting, 5 rebounds, and 9 assists. The Wolves just simply got outplayed in that game. They could not hit a shot. OKC was hitting every shot. If you think the reffing was atrocious, it probably was, but that was not the reason they lost game 1. They couldn't hit a shot. When you can't hit a shot, it doesn't matter how many calls the other team gets. That's basically the story for every single one of these games so far. Doesn't matter what the reffing is. If you can't hit a shot, you ain't winning. These NBA players are in the NBA for a reason. Like, even the worst, take the worst player in the NBA right now, the absolute worst NBA player in the league right now. That player is closer to Michael Jordan than you or I are to that player in terms of skill. Like, that's how good all of these players are. Like, if they can hit shots, they're gonna win the game. Like one team can hit, most of their shots, the other team can't. That team is gonna win the game. And doesn't matter how many fouls there are. It's you just hit 50% of your shots. You're not that good, but the other team is just slightly worse, and you're gonna win most games. Game 2 was 118-103. Ant played pretty well. He had 32 points on 12 of 26 shooting. McDaniels had 22 points, so he had a pretty good offensive game. But Nas, Julius, and DDV combined for 24 points on 8 of 27 shooting. They did not play that well. The bench, and I don't know Randall's a starter, but the bench has also not played that well. Game 3, they won 143-101. And again, it was basically the reverse of Game 1. Oklahoma City couldn't hit any shots. We could, and we won by a lot. By 42 points. We won by 42 in Game 3. Ant had 30 points, 12 of 17, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. If they want any chance in this series to force a Game 6, to force a Game 7, Ant's going to have to play like that. Randall's going to have to be his wingman of 9 of 15 shooting, putting up 24 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. DDV is going to have to play well. Nas is going to have to play well. This is going to have to be a total team effort to turn around this series. Game 4, they lost by 2 points. SGA, Williams, and Chet all had great games, 40, 34, and 21 points respectively. Randall had 5. He shot 1 of 7. That's his team's second best offensive player at this point. Put up 5 points. This is not how you are going to win a playoff series. I don't understand also why like a Dillingham or a Terrence Shannon Jr. aren't getting more looks than they are. Again, Chris Finch knows way more about basketball than I ever will. You can see what shirt I'm wearing. I've got a Wild hat on. You can see the jerseys over there. I'm not a huge basketball guy. I'm a hockey guy. But when these guys, it's the same thing in hockey too. In any sport, any professional sport, when someone's not playing well, why keep doing that same thing over and over and over again? Why not limit Conley's minutes and put Dillingham up there? What's it going to hurt at this point? You're already down 3-1 in the series. The only thing that'll hurt is one game, potentially one game, and it might hurt one game if you don't make any changes. Again, like I said, with how good these players are, coaching staffs are just as good. They're able to figure out the opponent's weaknesses. You can't tell me that OKC hasn't been watching film on the Wolves all year, and the Wolves in the first couple games of this series, and they're like, well, we know exactly what their weaknesses are. They're absolutely doing that. They're able to tell exactly how to defend these offensive performances And when these three players, SGA, Williams, and Chet, are combining for over 90 points, and the rest, like, you're not going to win games if that continues to happen. And your star players combined for 21. That's not how you win a playoff series. And I'm frustrated with it at this point. And OKC is a very good team, obviously. Did I think this was going to be Wolves in 5? No. If the Wolves were going to win, it was going to be in either 6 or 7 games. Realistically, it was going to be in 6 or 7 games. It wasn't going to be in 4 or 5 games. There's only been one team in the history of the NBA that's won 68 games and not won the championship. OKC won 68 games this year. There's only one team in the history of the NBA that has not won that many games and then gone on to win it all. That team was the Warriors team that broke the record. They were up 3-1 in the championship, in the NBA championship. Took a literal historic performance from LeBron James to overcome that lead. They just basically feels like a funeral at this point for the Timberwolves on the year. And I don't know how to argue any different. I don't know what, like, this series is going 7 games if the Wolves want to win. And yes, they won one game by 42 points, but I don't see a path for them to beat OKC. I don't. It's gonna take, again, a LeBron type performance out of one of these players. It's probably gonna have to be Ant, but I don't see it. I don't see it happening. I hate to do that, to tell people that. Try to be the positive one, but I don't see how this team is going to win a championship this year. I don't see how they're going to make it to a championship this year with the situation they're in right now. So let's move on to the predictions here. Had one come off the board. Said the Wolves will play the Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. Half of that was correct. They did not play the Nuggets. They obviously are playing the Thunder. So that is now 13 of 47 for 28% on the year. 3 predictions going on the board. Ant drops 40 plus in Game 5. Nas re-signs with the Wolves this offseason. And the Wolves lose the Western Conference Finals in 6 games exactly. All right. Moving on to the final team segment here. Ironically, it's 2 teams we're talking about today. So the first one we will talk about is the Wild. This offseason, I want to talk about some of their offseason priority list. They have $18.5 million in cap space this upcoming offseason. So I've got 3 things on their priority list at this point. First and foremost, re-sign Kirill Kaprizov. I don't care if they don't do anything else this offseason. If they do that and nothing else, that will be fantastic. Obviously, I want them to do more things than just that, but that has to be the number one thing on their priority list this upcoming year is re-sign Kirill Kaprizov. He's the best player in franchise history already. He's arguably a top 10 to top 5 player in the league, like in the NHL. And if he can stay healthy, I think he would have won the MVP award this year. So re-sign Kirill Kaprizov. None of the $18.5 million of cap space will be affected by his re-signing because he is under contract for next year for sure. He had $9 million. That is the last year of his deal. But on July 1st, he can start talking to the Wild about a contract extension. So they need to re-sign him, sign him to an extension this offseason. The second thing they need to do is sign a right-handed winger. We talked about this first one last week, but Brock Besser is a fantastic option. Go back and listen to that one if you didn't listen to 2 weeks ago's episode. Brock Besser, Minnesota native, it would be a great secondary scorer to Kirill, had 40 goals 2 years ago. Mitch Marner is another option. The only reason I wouldn't sign him is because of how much money it would cost them to sign him. I don't think they could have like a complete team around him for that. Around around Kirill and Mitch Marner. But again, he's an option on the board. He's 28 years old. He had 27 goals, 75 assists for 102 points last year. So if you put that type of production for, $10 to $12 million, I don't think he's going to sign. I think it's going to be more than that. But if you were able to get him for like a $12 million deal, I would maybe consider it then. But I think he's going to be more of the $13 to $14 million for Marner. So that's why I think Besser is the best option, because you get more of a goal scorer than a playmaker in Marner, and Besser is going to be a lot cheaper for you to build out the rest of your team with, to build them out with better players. Then last thing I have here on this list is acquire a center. I do have Claude Giroux on this list. He would be more the bottom of my list. Just because of his age, it wouldn't be like a long-term deal. Top of my list though, and this would be a trade, would be Tage Thompson. I think if you traded Marco Rossi and whatever else it needed to make it even, I think Tage Thompson would be a great goal-scoring center, and would be a great fit as a two center behind Eriksson Ek, or maybe as the one center on the line with Kaprizov, who, yes, scores a bunch of goals, but is also a playmaker. Tage Thompson scored 44 goals last year on the Buffalo Sabres. So you put those two together, and what type of magic can they work together on a top line? And then the last guy on my center list is Florida Panthers center Sam Bennett. He, again, is basically just a Eriksson Ek 2.0. He had 45 blocks last year. He had 145 hits. He is very much a two-way center. So projection on him is $7 to $8 million AAV. So that is very similar to Tage Thompson. Tage Thompson's under contract for, I can't remember if it's 4 more years after this one, or if it's 4 more years including this one. So 3 years after this one. But Tage Thompson is like a $7.1 million guy. The only unfortunate part is you would have to give up another asset to get him back. So those are some guys to keep an eye on for the Wild this offseason. Going over to the Frost, though, somebody knows how to win here in the state of Minnesota. The Frost played the Ottawa Charge in the Walter Cup finals. They won game one, or they lost game one in overtime, 2-1. The Frost tied it in the third period, but then Emily Clark scored in OT to win it for the Charge in Ottawa. Game 2 was a Britta Curl legacy game. Maddie Rooney stopped 37 of 38 shots. The one goal she allowed was with, I believe, like 3 minutes left in the third period. And then Britta Curl tied it with 16 seconds left in the third period at 1 to force the game into overtime. And then Britta Curl scored with 3:36 left in overtime to win game 2 and send it back to Minnesota tied at 1. And game 3, arguably the best game of this series. Game 3 was a 2-1 win for the Frost in triple overtime. They played 5 full periods and half of a 6th period. Katie Knoll scored with 10:03 left in the third period, or in the third overtime, the 6th period. A couple of the Frost players after the game, including Rooney, were told that there were little tubs of mustard being set up in between the bench and the locker room that they could grab for some sort of nutrition if the game went into a 4th overtime period. But luckily, for the players not have to eat mustard, Katie Knoll scored in overtime, in the third overtime, to win the game and take a 2-1 lead in the series. And game 3 was a score of 2-1. So, actually, every single game in this series was a score of 2-1. And every single game in this series was an overtime game, including game 4. It was a 2-1 Frost win. Liz Sheppers scored the overtime cup clinching goal in overtime. The Ohio State Buckeye scoring. Rooney stopped 33 of 34 shots, and the playoff MVP was Ottawa's goalie Gwyneth Phillips. She absolutely deserved to win it. She had like a sub-2 goals against average and was just standing on her head for Ottawa the entire series, and was the reason that this series probably wasn't a sweep by the Frost. Because the Frost looked just dominant in all 4 games that they played. I think you could make the argument that Maddie Rooney should have gotten the playoff MVP too. Both goalies were absolutely fantastic. Nicole Hensley played game 1, stopped 17 of 19 shots. She was fantastic in game 1 too. But again, all 3 goalies were just all 3 goalies were just outstanding in this series. So, again, congratulations to the Minnesota Frost. Can the Minnesota Frost come over and teach any of the men's teams on how to win games in the playoffs here? Might need to teach a course or something like that for these other teams. If we go to the predictions here, we'll start with the bad. I said the Frost will beat Montreal because that's who I mistakenly thought that they were going to play in the first round, but I realized they could play each other in the finals, and so that prediction is technically wrong because they did not beat Montreal. They didn't play Montreal. I said that Taylor Heisey will win the playoff MVP award. She did not. And then the 3 I got right were the Frost go back-to-back, the Frost win in 4 or less games, and at least one finals games goes to overtime. All 4 went to overtime. All 4 were a final score of 2-1. Ignore this text down below here. That is not the updated predictions there. I am 16 of 52 on the season for Rinkside Rundown. That is 31%. Overall, I am 49 correct out of 171 total predictions for 29% correct. Now, if we go over to the three coming on the board, I've got two Frost predictions and a Wild prediction here. Said a Frost goalie gets taken in the expansion draft. So either, technically they have three on the roster, but one of the goalies is going to get taken in the expansion draft. My guess is between Rooney and Hensley, whichever one of those two does not get protected. And we can talk about the expansion drafts in the future, or maybe we do mock expansion drafts. Let me know if that's something you want to see. But then Britta Curl scores double-digit goals next season. She was sitting at 9 this past season as a rookie, so I think she does score one more and hits the double-digit mark next season. And that is just next season. That's not career goals. That's just she'll hit 10 next season. And then final prediction, Kirill next year plays 75-plus games and scores 50-plus goals for the Wild. All right. Final segment here on the 301 show today. Got the power rankings for this episode. This one comes from Timmy Neutron in the comment section, this idea. So if you want to leave an idea for a comment, for a power ranking topic, leave it down below in the comments, and I'll be sure to include it here at some point. So this one is best single game performances by Minnesota athletes. So we have 10 performances here. Again, this is just single game. Maybe let me know if you want single season performances. That's an idea I was kicking around. But single game performances. So one game can't be like a series. It won't be Jose Miranda last year for the Twins, going, what was it, like 12 for 12 or something in 12 straight at bats or something like that. It's not going to be that. It's just one game, and it is their performance in that game. So let's start off here with number 10. We have Karl Anthony Towns on January 22nd, 2024. So January of last season, Karl Anthony Towns played 38 minutes. He put up 62 points against the Charlotte Hornets, and he had 21 of 35 shooting. He was 10 of 15 from 3, and he pulled down 8 rebounds and had 2 assists. The reason this one isn't higher is because the Wolves went on to lose the game. So I cannot put it any higher than 10 at this point. Number 9 is Philip Gustafson on October 15th, 2024 against the St. Louis Blues. He won the game. The Wild won that game. He stopped 27. He had 27 saves on 28 shots, and as a goalie, had 1 goal scored. So the first goalie goal in Wild history earns Philip Gustafson on the number 9 spot on the 301 show top 10 single game performances. Number 8, we have Marian Gaborik, December 20th of 2007. The Wild were playing the New York Rangers, and he had 10 shots on goal. He had 5 goals scored, and he had 1 assist. So he had 6 points in one game, and 5 of them were goals. So that, again, is good enough to earn the number 8 spot here on this list. Number 7, Kirk Cousins, 2022, KOC's first year here in Minnesota. It was week 15. He went 34 of 54. He had 460 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. He did have 2 interceptions, but he had a 99.3 passer rating and led the greatest comeback in NFL history. They were down 33-0 in the third quarter, and they came back to win a 39-36 in that game. So Kirk Cousins finds his way on to this list at number 7. Number 6, going back to 2006. This was 2004. I mistyped that. Johan Santana, though. 8 innings pitched. He gave up 2 hits, 0 runs, 0 walks, and struck out 17. So that is number 6 here, 17 strikeouts in 8 innings pitched for Johan Santana. That is good enough here for the 6th spot on this list. Number 5, sticking with the Twins here, but taking it all the way back to the 90s, we have Kirby Puckett in Game 6 of 1991. He had the game-saving catch at the wall and then walked it off, forced a Game 7 and kept the Twins alive, trying to go for their second World Series in 5 years. 4 years. They won in 87 and then 91. And Kirby Puckett's Game 6 performance was a massive reason for that. Number 4 here, moving on to number 4, going to 2007, sticking at the same site, the same stadium, the Metrodome, going to Adrian Peterson, though. Week 9, 2007. He had 30 rushing attempts. He had 3 touchdowns, and he had 296 rushing yards in one game. And that was also coming off of, that was his rookie year, I believe, Adrian Peterson. So absolutely insane that anybody did that, but especially a rookie. And then moving on here to number 3, we'll go back to 91, staying again in the same stadium. We go to Jack Morris, 10 shutout innings to clinch the World Series for the Twins, their second World Series, third in franchise history, but second since moving to Minnesota from Washington. And Jack Morris pitched 10 innings, got the 1-0 shutout win. Walk-off, we talked about that a couple weeks ago with Gene Larkin's walk-off in Game 7 being the one of the top individual moments in Minnesota sports history. And that would not have been possible without this single game performance from Jack Morris. Again, we're sticking at the Metrodome here, sticking in the 90s, though. Randy Moss's rookie year, Thanksgiving game, absolutely insane. Cemented Randy Moss, that year as one of the greatest wide receivers in the game. Proved that it wasn't a mistake to draft a wide receiver when they already had 2 great receivers on their roster. He had 3 catches for 163 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Absolutely insane. Every time he caught the ball, he found the end zone. Every single catch was for over 50 yards, too. They were on the other side of the 50, and he was able to somehow scamper in to the end zone and find 3 touchdowns on 3 catches for 163 yards. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be asking, what type of performance does it take to top that? I'll tell you here. Takes a high school performance to top that. Number 1, the 2012 Class AA Championship, Grant Bessie. He had 12 shots on goal in their game, championship game. They were the 5 seed, too. Benilde was the 5 seed in that championship game. He had 12 shots on goal. He had 5 goals on 12 shots. Now, you say, how is that any different than the Marion Gabrick that he had ranked at number 8? 3 of the 5 goals were shorthanded. He had a hat trick of shorthanded goals. That is the greatest performance by a Minnesota athlete ever. Grant Bessie in the Class A, AA championship at the X in front of a sold-out crowd. His teammate Jack Jablonski in attendance. Shout out Jack Jablonski. Bigger shout out to Grant Bessie making it to number 1 of the Class AA championship here on the power rankings for the 301 show. All right, thank you for watching this episode of the 301 show. And I do apologize for my voice. I should be back to normal for next episode. I'm not sure if I'll be coming out with one next week. I am going on vacation all week next week to celebrate my dad's birthday. So yeah, just know there might not be one next week, but we'll come back stronger than ever the week after that. But yeah, like, subscribe, leave a comment down below where you think I went wrong. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear a power rankings topic you want me to do. So yeah, talk to me in the comment section and we will see you next time.